Analyst. Let's speak now to legal analyst Mpumelelo Zikalala of Zikalala Attorneys. Kuzen, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Where can we start looking for possible convictions, if at all?
Let's start from the people that benefited from the contracts. There must be a money trail somewhere, somehow. Let's look into those particular accounts and see where we can be able to gather something from there, which is why it's crucial that the NPA and the enforcement agencies are supposed to move with speed in this particular matter. Let's remember, if you go to court, you must be able to prove beyond reasonable doubt that this particular individual, this particular entity is guilty, but most importantly, you must be able to recover. Now, if you're going to waste so much time, 4 years since the commission started, I think the amount of money that has been spent to the commission, and yet there's been no arrest and no conviction, then you must start to worry. Let's also remember the quality and the quantity of the evidence is going to be crucial in this particular matter. So if we do not move with speed and deal with all those entities that have been listed, that have been tabled by the commission, we are going to have a problem. It also begs the question of why didn't the NPA, why didn't the law enforcement agencies deal with this particular matter while evidence was being brought? But most importantly, maybe let's wait and see on the last part of the report, but I'll be interested to know what was happening within the law enforcement agencies during this particular time? What was happening within the NPA during this particular time? Is it a process or maybe an issue of that even the NPA and the law enforcement agencies were captured? If the answer is no, that means we have very strong legal frameworks and legislation and other principles that you can be able to use, but we are not utilizing. They are simply waiting for someone who's going to be active enough to press that green button so that at the end of the day, we're able to arrest people, we're able to recover the taxpayers' monies.
And you talk about, the NPA and law enforcement agencies as to where were they. I cannot help but think back to the commission. I mean, at some point, Parliament came under scrutiny as an oversight body because it appeared to have been sleeping on the job. And I wonder if the next installment of the report then comes, wouldn't it be also wise to take us into some kind of confidence as a nation as to tell us what the Auditor General was doing at the time potentially and other accounting bodies?
In fact, it should, so that at the end of the day, we have a commission that has clearly done its job and its report. But I think what would have maybe satisfied South Africans, including me, would be to say, let's call the NPA so that they're able to bring and provide public evidence and public submissions as to whether they're working optimally. Let's also call the law enforcement agencies, your SAPS, your Hawks, your SIU, so that they're able to come in and deal with the type of matters as early as possible and take us into confidence as members of the public that indeed they are doing their job. It was only a moment in that particular time in which they were not able to do their job. They've turned a new leaf as we are speaking now, and all that they want to do is to make sure that they get convictions and recover monies. But I must say, some South Africans are going to say we're not really confident. If this commission started 4 years ago, by the end of the first or the second year, there should have been cases which are completely being finalized in terms of investigations. We should be seeing not one, but many other cases which are in our courts of law, in which already evidence has been started to be brought in. And so that at the end of the day, it's easy for us to say, these are the individuals that you have convicted, this is the amount of money that you'll be able to recover. At the end of the day, there must be value for money even from the commission. It is not going to make sense for us to spend so much money and so much time, and yet there are no convictions, there's no recovery. It's just a regurgitation of facts and other installments of stories that have always been there but not acted upon.
So listening to what you're saying then, given some of the recommendations that are suggesting further investigation, but others are saying that monies must be recouped. In fact, one of the recommendations is that government needs to get a legal opinion as far as Blackhead Consulting is concerned to see whether or not they cannot be able to then recoup some of the money. So listening to you, you're saying that if they don't move with speed, we may not see this money come back into the state coffers.
Definitely, because at the end of the day, they may get an order saying that this particular individual must pay back the money. But if the money is not there and the individual declares insolvency and says, I don't have it, you may have an order which is perfectly written, purely in your favor, and yet you can't execute it because there's nothing in which you're going to be able to get, which is why it is important that you must be able to move with speed, which is why it's important that, and why our legal frameworks and legislation which is applicable allows us to freeze the accounts of those that are involved or alleged to be involved in instances of corruption, which is purely to make sure that by the time you get the official order, the time in which this particular person who is implicated in this particular matter gets an opportunity to plead their case and they lose at court, you must get back something at the end of the day. All that we are dealing with here is taxpayers' monies. And we must be able to say this is the value for money that we have received from the Commission. The amount in which we have paid to the Commission itself to date is almost equivalent to a number of municipalities' financial year's budget. Now, the question would be, did we really see value for money? If we didn't see value for money, where was the shortfall? One thing which is always missing, and I've always said it a number of times, is that we need to know what was impeding or stopping law enforcement agencies and stopping the NPA from doing its job, what was stopping the AG from doing its job, what was stopping SCOPA and MPEC from doing its job, what was stopping the role of the parliamentary committees from doing their job, and why were the political appointees, I mean the ministers and the MECs and the deputy ministers, not able to pick up on these things at an earlier stage? Is it a question of the structures, the legal frameworks are not there, or they are not working optimally, or is it a process of saying we've got the wrong individuals who are using the correct frameworks and not using them at all to make sure that our funds as taxpayers are not being misused? So,
very briefly then, do you think that the NPA is going to be able to deal with some of the matters that have been referred for further investigation, or even the law enforcement agencies?
If we look at the past reports, the only thing which is constant in all of them, and all that ought to be, but it's the sheer volume of the whole process, is that there are a number of things in which the Commission is saying, I can't pronounce on this matter, refer to the NPA for further investigation. The load is simply going to be too much. And they may need to come back and say, let us sift and see where the low-hanging fruits, so that at the end of the day, you are able to prove value for money. But most importantly, you are able to show South Africans that indeed you are working. What is also at stake in this particular matter is the brand of the NPA. It is the integrity of the NPA. It is the ability of the NPA to do its job, especially those individuals that have been newly appointed. So it's crucial for them to show that they've been appointed to do the job and they've done the job in a manner in which they're supposed to do it in. But what is going to be crucial in this matter is the speed. As stated earlier, the quality and quantity of the evidence, which is crucial. Otherwise, you'll not be able to get a conviction.
Now, there are also allegations that aren't new, of course, but now they're in the report. They suggest that the former President Jacob Zuma may have delegated his duties when it came to the appointment of members of cabinet. Now, if these allegations stand scrutiny, how damaging are they to him?
Let's look at whether there's actually a framework or legal framework in which he is supposed to be accountable to in that particular sense. Now, it's going to be very difficult to prove that he failed to delegate his duties, or whether he delegated his duties or not. Let's remember that the Constitution is very clear. It says that the prerogative to appoint individuals purely rests with the president, but it has never dictated that. When that has been scrutinized, let's also look at the qualifications of the individuals that are there. Let us look at the track record of the individuals that are there. Up to now, and including the current president, I'm not sure whether there are any ministers that have been purely appointed based on their experience, based on their qualification, and whether they have the ability to do the job. Most importantly, when the financial year starts and the financial year ends, when it comes to that particular performance, none of which is then imputed upon that particular political appointee or the minister or the deputy ministers. Some of them would receive bad opinions. They would receive very bad performance reviews, and basically saying that they're not working. But we'll see them coming back time and again. So it purely proves that at the end of the day, it seems as if the mechanism that we have to scrutinize and to make sure that the correct people are employed within the correct or deployed within the correct position is not being done, purely because the power to appoint a minister or a deputy minister solely lies with the president, and the president has not been held accountable as to state, why did you choose person A instead of person B? Maybe that's another thing the Commission should have stated or lamented upon, in terms of saying, we do realize that there are certain things which have not been done. But let's try and assist you, Mr. President, when you are creating a criteria for choosing the correct individuals. This is what you must look at. Let's also remember that that's the job of the Commission. They're supposed to come up with new innovative things or innovative frameworks that you have never thought of before, never been utilized before, so that they're able to come to their aid. Their job is not simply to listen to the evidence and at the end of the day say, please refer to the NPA for further investigation. It's not supposed to work like that.
So talking about new things that you talk about, the report is also making some legislative proposals here, especially when looking at the issues around the tender system. I mean, they're talking about those that are evaluating the tenders must also be held to account. How much of an impact do you think this will have on bid adjudicators and evaluators, for example?
It's going to have a huge impact. In fact, I think that's going to lament the processes that are already there, maybe creating stronger points and make it easier to prosecute. Let's remember, the start point of all tender issues which are or tenders that have gone wrong, it is during that particular stage of bid evaluation and bid adjudication. So if you are able to deal with the incompetencies in that particular manner, you will be able to deal with all the other repercussions that may be there. Now, what has always been there is that if you look at the various legislation, the PFMA, Municipal Finance Management Act, yes, it does state a criteria that must be used, but it is less focused on the individuals that are there. It is less focused on the type of audit or lifestyle audits in which is supposed to be conducted on those individuals. You would find that some of them would be able to adjudicate matters in which they are dealing with things that they have no knowledge of. You would find someone who has never been a lawyer, someone who doesn't even know what happens within a law firm, adjudicating a tender dealing with legal services. Now the question is, what criteria did you use to distinguish or to state this is the appropriate and the right individual for the job? Maybe that's another thing in which government is supposed, or our legislature is supposed to look at it and say, let's change it if we want to reform all these things. Now, that's the type of recommendations that we should be expecting from the Commission. I would have also expected the Commission to expand about on the job of the AG and also of the Parliamentary Committee. Parliamentarians are there to play an oversight role. Currently, there's nothing which dictates to them how the oversight role should be played, and there are no repercussions if they haven't played their roles. And at the end of the day, we end up losing taxpayers' money.
Very briefly, as we wrap up, the quality of evidence, as you say, and you've said it a number of times, that it's going to be crucial when it comes to some of these matters. Let's look at that and the report that has just came out, juxtaposing it with the previous ones as well. How much of legal scrutiny do you think it can stand or even survive should it be challenged?
I get very worried when I read a sentence within the report that says, "in my opinion," and there are no concrete sort of evidence which leads or that is able to say, I've been able to reach this particular opinion because of the following factors. It makes it very difficult, and it's going to make it very easy for those who are going to want to put holes at the report to say, look at the manner in which this particular evidence was evaluated, look at which evidence was accepted, look at which evidence was not accepted. Hence, they've reached their conclusion using wrong facts. Hence, this particular report must be set aside. I do not think that in many instances they are going to pass the legal scrutiny when it comes to our courts. Our courts are very crude when it comes to this type of information. You have to make facts and come to determinations after you have quite carefully considered all the facts that are there, giving everybody an opportunity to stand their ground and to reply. So it may be that from the report's point of view or from the Commission's point of view, the information could be very lucrative, the information could be very informative, but it would be another story when you go to court. And I think on a number of submissions, on a number of allegations that are there, they are going to fail when you go into the court of law, especially if you focus on the criminal side where the burden of proof is that of guilt beyond reasonable doubt.
All right, it sounds like we are in for quite a ride then, if indeed it is taken under judicial review, as we saw the previous one, Minister Kwadamantashe saying he was going to do that. But let me thank you there for your time and giving us a sense of, legally speaking, how could things work going forward. That was legal analyst Mpumelelo Zikalala of Zikalala Attorney.